What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. So we've had some pretty sweet One Piece drops this week. We've had the SBS. One Piece hit 600 million copies sold in total, surpassing Superman. We got some big announcements from Oda himself. A lot of cool stuff going on. We're going to talk about the SBS and we're going to talk about the latest chapter, of course. So if you have not caught up to the latest chapters or episodes, please know that there will be spoilers ahead.
Spoilers.
So first off, we have the redrawing of Volume 12. That's right, Oda did a complete redraw. We have all the updated Straw Hats in here, that's including Jinbei. We have the Thousand Sunny, and we have the updated designs. Now, not everyone is in their exact fits, but I guess it's mostly Robin and Nami that have changed. Everyone else is in their basically pre-time skip fit, the Fisherman Island fit, the Comet fit. It's mostly noted that I think Frankie has his original hair. Other than that, pretty much everyone's in the fit. The color scheme's a little bit changed. Like I think Sanji's shirt's a different color. Luffy's sash and pants are a different color. Frankie's shirt's a different color. Like there's some color changes here and there that I think make it pop a little bit better. Overall, really cool. There's also a custom illustration for the One Piece live action volume 2. And it's cool because it's got the live action characters over the old kind of like volume cover. So like you see in the background, you see the old characters and you see all the live action characters kind of posed over them. Really cool. We also got the volume cover, and that has like Luffy with his hand over Chopper, live action Chopper. So a lot of cool art coming out this week. You love to see it. But let's get into the chapter 1176 with Pride. So we're seeing the aftermath of Loki's True Time, which is that giant lightning cannon he shot from his mouth last chapter, and it's clearing out everything. Now, we get this view from Frankie, Lilith, and Bonnie, who are kind of off. They were at the factory a while ago. This is, I think, where they're still at. And you have Lilith taking some stuff out of the Vegapunk case, where his extra body is. Now, Vegapunk takes out what he calls Omni-Drain Converters, or ODCs for short. And it seems like this is hover-based technology. At least that's what I grasped from what Lilith is talking about. I'm not sure if we dealt with ODCs in Egghead. I'm wondering if that has to do with like the boots, how they kind of operated. But as they get used in Elbaf, they seem to have different properties. Now, Lilith also mentions that, don't you feel it? Like there's a bunch of energy around us right now, and that basically we have to try harnessing it. And she also asks Frankie, like, have you ever tried harnessing power other than cola? And I think this speaks to the ancient technology that Elbaf may have had. We know we see that giant factory, so it's very possible that in ancient Elbaf, they were able to tap into this energy that Lilith is talking about right now. We pan over to the other Straw Hats. They're viewing all the flames, all the chaos, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. They see Loki and they're like, whoa, that thing's even bigger than Kaido. They also remember that Luffy was on his back, so so it's probably safe to say that that big dragon was on our side. And everyone acknowledges that, but they're too worried about the owl house, the library, the school. They want to get that fixed first, so they start heading over there. They're checking in on Saul, who's been knocked out because he tried unsuccessfully many times to stop the kid, so he's all beaten, bloody, and bruised. And that's when Nami pulls out Zeus. And Zeus is like teamed up with the water, just packed with water. So he's basically just gonna reign over everything, put the fires out. Now it does appear to be working, but we have Killingham on the side, basically being like, hey, you guys ain't supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be letting Elbaf burn. And so Killingham gets one of his dream monsters called a Lindworm to bite Zeus. So now we have Zeus contained in the worm. Everything's still kind of on fire. And because of that, Killingham gets the attention of Sanji and Jinbei, and they both move on the offensive to get him out of the way. And we pan back to Lilith, so we're kind of like bouncing back and forth a little bit. I think it's because these two plot points are converging together, because we have the OCDs coming in, and it seems like they're dispelling like ice. And maybe it's even more adept to say that it's sucking in the fire and converting it to ice. Almost like if you see in Fire Force, I forget his name. There's a guy who takes the heat of fire and basically changes it to ice. He basically super cools it. That seems like it's what's happening here. I'm not sure about what technology exactly Vegapunk is using. I guess they are called converters, so they might just be literally converting the energy of fire into ice. And this basically freezes everything over. And with that, the library, the school, all this stuff should be saved. I don't know how extensive the damage is on the inside. It seems like the structures didn't take too much damage, from being real honest. They still seem pretty intact. So Saul and Robin approach the library and it looks like everything is okay. Like I said, it's pretty much just coated in ice, but nothing seems to be terribly destroyed. We pan back to Lilith and she has one of the converters, but she also has one of Frankie's colas. And she ends up pumping something into the cola and passing it back to Frankie. And Lilith ends up calling it Super Vega Cola, and it's basically just pumped full of energy. Frankie even mentions that like the bottle is going to explode in his hand. And this is when Lilith comments that basically Frankie's design is very cool, even going as far to say that you're on par with the Pacifista. And now we do know that Frankie basically took Vegapunk's designs and incorporated them himself, so it's not too far off to say that he has very similar internal structures. So what Vegapunk is basically doing now is taking the technology that he's noticed within Frankie and giving it a boost. This is something I wanted from Egghead. I wanted Vegapunk and Frankie to come together to basically give Frankie a buff. And that's essentially what this cola is like it's a buff to his power. Lilith says that once you use this, your power will grow tenfold. Like you're about to go crazy. And so if Frankie's able to harness what Vegapunk is doing right now, and so if Frankie's able to harness what Lilith just did on a bigger scale, he could get a huge power up. We're back over to the Lindworm and the rest of the Straw Hats. Zeus is currently stuck inside. He's all in one piece inside, but he's just stuck in there. He can't really get out. And they don't really have a way to save him. Saul and Robin are still trying to get to the library, but we have Killingham standing in the way with the Lindworm, going to attack again. Instead of attacking Jinbei, instead of attacking Saul, he's attacking the library though, because he basically wants it wiped out. And I mean, that's their end goal is to wipe out all of Elbaf's history. So he's like, if it's not gonna be on fire, we're just gonna eat it. One way or another, it's getting destroyed. And so this causes a really cool team up. We have Jinbei who's out in the water. He's getting ready to strike the Lindworm to get Zeus out. To which we get a mention from Killingham of like, oh, it's the fishermen, like they're so repulsive. And we know that celestial dragons are very bigoted like that. We know that that's how they respond to those kinds of things. I know for a while there was a theory that Killingham had something mixed in within him. I always thought that wouldn't be the case because if he's a celestial dragon, they want to be purebloods. They wouldn't want anything mixed. So this makes sense. This checks out. I'm imagining the sharp teeth have more to do with his devil fruit than it does anything else. Sanji sees Killingham. He's like, hey, Jinbei's part of our team now. You can't be talking to him like that. And we also get Frankie, who has inducted the coal in himself and launches himself through the air. We get a signature super and he's talking about his power going through the roof. Man is jacked. So we're getting a combo move. We have Frankie with the super strong. We have Jinbei with the Goijin karate. And then we have Sanji with E for Janbei. And they all kind of have like different points of attack. You have Frankie who strikes the top of the Lindworm, and this basically blows his head off his body. Also to be noted that this is a new move from Frankie because it's super strong Dexter. Now I'm being told that Dexter is a Latin term for right, so super strong right is essentially the move he's using. It would be cool if he uses the name Dexter though, just to change it up a little bit. You have Jinbei with Vagabond Drill punching the Lindworm's stomach. This is launching Zeus straight out of the body. So we get the Lindworm's head taken off, Zeus is saved from the inner body, and then you have Sanji who lands a Kankase on Killingham himself. Now we know that the God's Knights can regenerate. They don't really take all that much damage, especially if it's not heavily hockey infused, if it's not Conqueror's hockey. So we'll see how Killingham shapes up from that attack. I don't expect him to really be knocked out, and he's probably gonna come back next chapter with some sauce. Now let's head over to the West Village where Dory and Broggy are fighting the rest of the giants. And this war is still going on. Everyone's still clashing. They're realizing that no matter what they do, they can't really take down the giants because they all have regeneration. It's pretty much a fruitless effort and they don't know what to do next. But we see Dory and Broggy and it looks like they're running out of stamina. Now I'm going to point something out here because it looks like it changes throughout the rest of the chapter, but Broggy has both his arms here, and I don't know if this is a matter of regeneration, this is like a permanent thing, because I think in the rest of the chapter, it seems like that arm is no longer there. But more to the point, Dory and Bruggy are able to start communicating with each other. And they're checking to see like, hey, do you still have like some of you in there? And they're barely hanging on. Like they have the tiniest shred of sentience left. And they're talking to each other and saying like, you know, we're a disgrace. We talked about killing Jarl, like we're going against our comrades. This is basically the highest dishonor we could have. And so there's only one thing we can do, and that's take each other out. So they basically mutually agree in their heads that this is what they're going to do. And then they give their farewell. They cross weapons and take their heads off. Clean off. And of course, everyone is shocked by this. Even Zoro is like pretty shocked by this because they just chopped their heads off and then their bodies collapse on the ground. Now, after this, they end up getting undomi reversied. And this is the first instance of where it looks like Bruggy doesn't have his arm anymore, because you see him both loop over, you see Bruggy's body, you can see his arm, and there's definitely nothing like below the elbow. But apparently they came back fine, like heads reattached, back to normal, unaffected by whatever they just did, and seemingly free from the Domi Reversi. And so this leads to the rest of the giants being like, okay, so death breaks the curse. If we kill them, we stop the Domi Reversi. And so we get this panel with Stanson, we get Bruggy, Dory, and Hydruden all standing up, ready to fight the rest of the Domi Reversi giants. And they basically come to the conclusion that as long as they go all out and kill them, they land a deadly blow, the Domi Reversi will be undone. So my guess is that they're going to start going for the throat, trying to land kill shots, and hopefully reverse the Domi Reversi. And they all talk about how they kind of feel bad for going against each other, but they all have smiles on their face. So they're ready to start taking people out. Like they're ready to have some fun with it. That is the end of the chapter, and I do believe they have a break next week. So it will be a long break week for us to discuss this. I think there's going to be some controversy on this just because of how easy that was, right? Basically, all it took was a critical blow, and that undoes the Domi Reversi. I think that does raise questions because you look at someone like Rox, and they had to use Conqueror's Hockey at its max potential to put Rox down. And for Rox, it didn't kill him, it just knocked him out of Domi Reversi. You look at someone like Harold. Loki hit him with basically max damage. It blew his entire body up. He didn't Domi Reversi back. He just stayed a pair of legs. And then you look at some of the Domi Reversi characters in God Valley. They didn't turn back. So there stands to be some kind of discrepancy with how exactly that works. Honestly, in my opinion, I think it'd be really cool if Emu did this as a setup. If Emu gave Dory and Bruggy back and was like, hey, let me let them think death is the answer. Let me give them a sliver of hope before I take it all away. Because otherwise I feel like it doesn't work in the realm of powers we've seen so far. I imagine we're going to get a deeper explanation if that is how the power works. It just doesn't seem like that's how it should work. Also, in the panel of everyone standing up, it does again seem like here, Broggy does not have that left arm. So that must have just been a part of the Domi Reversi. It seems like that arm is gone for good. That is going to be it for the chapter, but let's talk about what's going on in the world of One Piece. So the biggest thing, we have cracked the 600 million milestone, meaning we've outsold Superman. You know, we were having this discussion previously, honestly, not too long ago, where we were talking about how One Piece eclipsed Batman. And basically it was a matter of time before we got to Superman. Well, it is official, we have eclipsed it. And what that means is, like, so we've outsold Superman, we've become the best-selling comic of all time. And so now, since we've eclipsed that, we are in the running for best-selling fiction series of all time, which I believe Oda is sitting at around 7 or 8. And we're talking about like in the leagues of the Shakespeares of the world. So we've transcended beyond And I mean, it's insane that One Piece just keeps climbing, just keeps going, keeps surpassing. The fact that One Piece has like kind of eclipsed the entirety of the comic Western culture is insane. That just goes to show how like just how adapted and loved One Piece is, to where like it's not just, you know, Japan, although I think Japan does have like a lot of the sales, or at least more than half I think is Japan buying One Piece, but it's still like globally a sensation. So kudos to One Piece. We got more to take down. We're coming for you, Shakespeare. We're going for number 1. Now, as part of a celebration for One Piece hitting this milestone, Oda released a video where he essentially has written down the One Piece, what the One Piece is, and he put it in a capsule and they dropped it in the ocean. So somewhere out there, just floating somewhere out there in the sea, is the secret to One Piece. And I mean, you think about that in the context of the series, that's how the series started, right? Or at least that's the main drive of the series, is that there is this legendary treasure out there that no one knows exactly where it's at. They just know it's out there. And everyone's rushing to get it. And that's what Roger started. That's what Whitebeard ignited. And now you have Oda himself kind of doing his real life version of this. And it would be kind of crazy if like a bunch of One Piece fans actually started going out to sea to try and find this. Now, I would wonder if there's actually something like stored on there, because if someone does find it, then they have the potential to ruin the entire series. So I would really wonder if Oda put that on there, if this is kind of more like a publicity thing, which I feel like would make more sense if Oda actually wrote the One Piece on this paper and put it down there. That'd be crazy. But I believe there's also another announcement coming up March 4th. And this is, I believe, separate from the announcements that we had said previously, where One Piece is going to be on the Shonen Jump cover. We're going to have the color spread, and then we get an announcement then too. So we're getting a lot of One Piece content this week. And I'm here for it. I'm eating it up. Along with that, we have SBS 114. So we got to talk through some of these questions. Now, as always, there's some jokes. There's some less important stuff that I'm not going to hit. If you look at Pew Piece, Marco the Phoenix on Twitter, they have like all of it on their pages. That's where I'm getting my stuff from. So if you want to go check it out for yourself, check out Pew Piece. He's got it all in there. But we're going to break down some of the more interesting stuff, or stuff I find interesting, and just talk about that a little bit. The first thing we'll hit is some of just the small facts that Oda threw in there. For example, the name of Rox's ship is called Fury, or I believe more accurately named Rox's Fury. The name of his sword is called Eclipse. I don't know if it's been confirmed as a supreme grade sword. It didn't seem like that information came along with it. We got just the name. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a supreme grade. We have the reveal of Shanks and Shamrock's mother's name, which is Magnolia. And Magnolia is like a flower. I honestly, when I was thinking about it, I was like, it must be a red, like budding flower. And it's more of like a gold pinkish flower. It doesn't really have the red in there. So I'm wondering if there's any other significance to that name, or if it's literally just name. And those were kind of like the slip it in things, where it's like they're just giving us some info, not necessarily tied to a big question. We also got what Yamato would look like in the good and bad futures. The good future is pretty much just Yamato looking the same, just slightly older each time. Honestly, at 40, there's barely any difference. You can see like some of the wrinkles coming in at 60, but that's about it. In the bad future, though, Yamato is basically just turning into Odin, where we have like the Odin hairstyle, like the Odin complete like kind of personality taking over. And then at 60, it's just Yamato on fire. Yamato being boiled alive because that's how Odin died. And so it's just a pile of bones on fire because I am Odin. Thought that was funny. Of course, that's anytime you bring up Yamato, you're gonna get a lot of controversy, a lot of drama. This itself doesn't seem to really point itself in that direction, but people will take what they want out of it. We also got the volume 114 cover. Now, initially when we got it, we didn't see Stussy on there. Turns out there's a hidden cover, a hidden version that has Stussy in the O of One Piece. So Stussy is there, just not on the main cover. I thought it'd be kind of cool to have her like replace the Straw Hat Jolly Roger for the cover. I don't see why that would be an issue, why they wouldn't do it for like the normal production, but you know, it is what it is. Cool cover either way. But let's talk about the SBS questions, because we got some good stuff in here. We got some really good stuff in here. We get a question about the standard activities or games that the Straw Hats play during their parties. So like what the Straw Hats kind of do on the ship or when they're having a party. And we've seen what they do before, but Oda breaks it down for us here so we kind of get the step-by-step of how the parties start. So Brook gets the music going, whether it's a piano, violin, whatever he starts cranking up. He gets the mood going in. And then you have Frankie, who will play guitar for the first half, and then he'll start singing and dancing afterwards. And this is when they get like the chopsticks in the nose, they get like the pauldrons, like they do the whole dance that basically what we see in Thriller Bark, what we see in Enies Lobby, that kind of party style is what they do every time. And then like Usopp has his own set of games. Like Usopp is the game master. So he has like quizzes, he has like trivia, he has board games, arm wrestling, they have Jenga, they have darts. And then you have some of the other games for, it sounds like it's like Zoro, Nami, and Jinbei, what they would be doing. Because you have like the drinking contest, you have the speed eating contest, Jinbei's gambling. Like it sounds like a really good time. I'm not gonna lie, it sounds like a really good time. I would love to see some of this happen like on the in-betweens, because it feels like we're always like go, 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 go. When it comes to One Piece and like the next arc, it feels like the parties are becoming a bit more constrained. I think in the last few arcs, we even skipped some parties because we're moving so fast towards a certain goal that we don't have the time for it. But Oda does say like the standard of every party is like singing. So like I would imagine like every party, Brook starts doing music, and then you get Frankie singing and playing some guitar. That's a common stay of every party, and then they kind of break out into where there's gonna be dancing, where there's gonna be games, this, that, or the other. In one of the questions, do you have a reader asking about Oda's biggest fear? They're referencing chapter 1142, where we have like some of the dream monsters from Elbaf, and they're like, I can't believe the kids didn't mention like final exams or anything like that. It's like school stuff. And like, they ask Oda what his greatest fear is, and then they say it's the PTA, isn't it? And Oda's just like, yeah, PTA. That's a good answer. Which is Parent Teacher Association. I sometimes I forget that Oda has kids, and as much as a joke answer this is, it does serve to remind me that Oda has like an entire family. So like he's not just sitting in a room doing One Piece. He has like a wife, he has children that he actually has to take care of and like be a part of their lives as well. We get a question about Amazon Lily and like how the Empress system works. How do you become Empress? Is it tied to being captain? Is it one or the other? And Oda was like, so the way it works is strength is beauty. The strongest and most beautiful person wins the throne, and they become Empress. In becoming Empress, they serve as the captain of the Kuja Pirates. So basically, you prove yourself as the strongest and the most beautiful, and that then makes you the Empress, which then makes you the captain. So the Empress will always be the captain of the Kuja Pirates, is how that goes. So Gloriosa was proven the strongest, she was the most beautiful, she was captain. When she left, Shaki came up next. And although I think Shaki is mentioned as being the most beautiful, I would say that Gloriosa was probably stronger, and that could have played a role in who became captain, who didn't. Also, I wouldn't imagine that Shaki wanted it too much. Oda also mentions that with the earrings kind of serve as the crown. That's how you know the royalty. Because you know, Gloriosa has those, Shaki has those, Boa has those. Everyone who becomes the Empress gets those earrings, and they can either choose to keep them once they've left their post, or they can just get rid of them. As far as we know, Gloriosa kept hers. It doesn't seem like Shaki kept hers, because we've seen Shaki before in her bar. She's not wearing those earrings, or else that would have been a dead giveaway. Which I would imagine is really the only reason she's not still wearing them, is because Oda had different plans for her, but he didn't want to give away too early. Someone asked about the Dindin Mushi, and basically how do they stay in good health on the ship? Like, are they being fed? Are they being properly taken care of? How do the Straw Hats keep them running, because they're living animals? And so Oda says 5 of the Straw Hats have Dindin Mushi: Nami, Usopp, Sanji, Robin, and Frankie. They all have like baby Dindin Mushi, which they use for like short distance communication. I believe they also have some long distance Dindin Mushi that they use for their ship in general. But apparently the way they eat is that they let the Dindin Mushi roam around like the Tangerine Gardens or like Nami's gardens and everything. So like they'll survive off like foods, fruits, whatever they find in the gardens. And they also like being watered. So whenever they get watered, like they can use that they can survive for about 3 months without food. So like you hit them with some water, they're good to go. And apparently the water gives them a lot of energy. All to say that the Straw Hats do take good care of the Dendenmushi and they keep them up and running. We have a question about Roger's ship and how he has the mustache on his Jolly Roger before he actually had a mustache. And Oda's answer is that they are udon noodles. And Oda says in the answer that he expected a lot of people to not care, pretty much. He was like, yeah, that's because it's obviously his mustache. And it's obviously like a signature part of Roger. But yeah, there's a point where Roger doesn't have that mustache, but he still has the same Jolly Roger. And Oda's just like, yeah, it's just udon noodles. So I mean, it's a joke answer. Like the main thing is that Oda created this. He didn't really care, and he didn't think people would care that Roger didn't have the mustache. But since someone brought it up, he created an quote unquote answer for it. We had a question about Stussy's bat fruit. And this is really just about the spelling of it. As I believe Stussy's is Bato Bato with 2 T's. And then there's another fruit, the Bato Bato with 1 T, which comes from the game Unlimited World Red, where they have a similar devil fruit. Whereas like Stussy's is leaning more towards like a bat / succubus. The one in the game is like a bat vampire. But Oda's like, yeah, so that fruit technically exists. So he wanted to separate the two. And by doing so, he just did a different spelling. And Oda has mentioned before that like the non-canon fruits sometimes interfere with his main story because it's not a matter of just being like, okay, well, that non-canon fruit isn't part of the story, so I can just use that name again. Oda likes to differentiate. Oda likes to keep things separate. So it's like, okay, that fruit has been used before. I want to keep things linear and clear in my story. So I'm going to change the way the name works in my story. And that's what we have here with Stussy's fruit. We had a question about Shiki, and they just want to know like some basic stuff about him, like his swords, his age, things like that. Oda starts by telling them to go watch Strong World to get like a full in-depth view of Shiki. But apparently he's currently 73 years old, which would indicate that he's still alive somewhere. And that his swords are both Ryo Wazemonos, which I believe are the 50 skillful grade. So like the lowest of the graded swords. He also comes from Yano country, which is like a discount Wano country, which is really funny. And he doesn't really carry a whole lot of like Wano characteristics, I would say. It'd be interesting to see him interact more on Wano and just see how he looks at that compared to Yano. But cool stuff about Shiki. Now we're getting into some more of the interesting stuff, or the stuff that I really like. Because we got questions about the Rocks Pirates and some of the devil fruits they have. Because as we see in the story, they have devil fruits that characters in current time have. Because we saw a kid's fruit, we saw Mr. Five's fruit, we saw Perona's fruit. And so we're looking at this like, okay, so we didn't have confirmation because we just saw like characters using their fruits. Like we just saw Captain John use the Jika Jika. We saw Ganjui use the Bomb Bomb fruit. And like we can, because we're readers of the story, we know the effects of the fruit. So we see what happens and we're like, okay, I understand that fruit is this. I understand that fruit is that. Even with Gil Bastar, who has Perona's fruit, we really only saw like the ghosts coming out of him. We didn't see him actually use it. We didn't get any real confirmation. But Oda was like, yep, these are all previous users, they're all dead. So all the fruits came back to the world. He also says that these 3 appeared as general zombies during the Thriller Bark arc. And we know for sure Captain John did. I don't know if we have the confirmation on Ganjui and on Gil Bastar. I would have to go back and look because I don't think, I know there's that panel of all of the general zombies, right? That's the one where we have like Captain John standing out in front, and then we have kind of the other zombies behind him. I think there was one of those zombies. It was a really big guy who had, I think, centaur legs, who people kind of looked at as Ganjui. I think that's probably accurate, just based on design. I don't remember if we ever saw someone that looked like Gil Bastar. I would have to go back and look at that image. But I think that's really cool. The thing I like about this is that we saw it in the story, and we didn't really need confirmation. We could see like the fruits effects. We see something very common that we've seen in the main story. We can infer that, okay, these were previous fruit users. And I don't think that's something that Oda would normally have to waste time doing. I don't think it would be necessary to have in the main story be like, hey, this is the previous user of this is fruit. We can see that. We know the effects. We know how it works. The only reason Oda would have to describe something is if we saw a fruit that had similar effects to something else and it was a new fruit. So it's like maybe there's a fruit that controls metal and not magnetism, and Captain John had that. That will be the case where we need a description of that fruit. As far as this stuff goes, I think it's perfectly fine that it's in SBS or like a Viver card where it's like, yeah, we could tell. We know whose fruit that was, but it's good to get confirmation. And then we're on to Moria, because if you remember, there is a cover story where we see a shrine, and the shrine is dedicated to Kozuki Moria. And everyone went crazy on that because it's like, is that Gecko Moria's shrine? Is that a family lineage? And how that all came to be. Oda has given us confirmation that yes, that is for Gecko Moria. And he wanted to do this in the main story, which I think would have been really, really epic. I'm actually pretty bummed that this got cut. But basically what happens is we know he has this fight with Kaido where his entire crew gets killed and he basically flees. And this kind of causes him to develop a personality where he doesn't really want to try. He depends on, the zombies. He kind of loses that glimmer of hope. And on his way out, like when he fled, he took Ryuma, he took Shushui, took all that stuff. And so from all that, we knew that he was in Wano at some point. Apparently, when Moria was young, he washed ashore in Wano. The people of Ringo took him in, and they actually really liked him, so they gave him the name Kozuki in honor of his strength. So he probably came in, was really kind to everyone, fought for them, like showed off his own strength, proved himself pretty much, and he got the name Kozuki. And he had already been doing some pirating, so it seems like there was a point in time where he kind of got some fame. Now he returned to Wano, trying to set people free from Kaido, and that's when he got mopped. So like he actually went to Wano. He went back to Wano to try and save them from Kaido's reign. Now because of that loss, and because pretty much his entire crew got wiped out, he disappeared. He vanished, never to be seen again by anybody of Wano. And because of this, they actually thought that he died in his fight with Kaido. And so what they did was they made a shrine in his honor to say that, hey, this man fought for us at one point and lost his life. And that's crazy Moria lore, because you would never have expected him to have been even like an honorable or at least a good-hearted person, because we see like the idea of Moria is someone who lost their will, someone who lost their hope to, kind of achieve things, or like he's a lie about now. We knew that Kaido beat him and that kind of did a dent on his ego, but we didn't know to what degree. But the fact that his fight in Wano was actually to save Wano, and him failing kind of just ruined his entire viewpoint of life is crazy. I would have loved to see that in the main story. There's nothing we could really do about it now. Wano's over, but that would have been so cool. That would have been really cool. And then the final SBS. We get confirmation of who was up talking to the Gorosei. Was it Shanks or Shamrock? In Maryjoy. And Oda confirms that it was Shamrock. Now, there has been a bit of controversy on this one in particular. Honestly, on the last two, on Moria's and this one, because people really want this in the main story. And people felt like this one right here, the Shamrock one, was a spoiler. Now, if you've been reading the story, if you've been kind of keeping track of everything, Shamrock is the only one that makes sense in this scenario. Whereas when we thought it was Shanks, we had a lot of questions as to how that worked. And we considered Shanks a traitor because like the only reason he'd be up here to talk about things like this would be, it would be traitorous. So the entire idea of it being Shamrock kind of pushes that agenda on its head, but also it makes more sense for it to be Shamrock because he's already in the area. And based on clues we got as we started seeing Shamrock, we realized that, okay, the person that went there was probably Shamrock and not Shanks. So I'm not upset with the reveal. I think it makes sense. I think we kind of already got there. Again, this is one of those things where it's like, it's cool that we got the confirmation. We inferred what happened here. It's cool that you kind of came out and just said, hey, just by the way, this is this. I don't think it changes anything, although it does make me wonder who that pirate is that Shamrock wanted to talk about, because I feel like that takes away the idea that it's Luffy, it takes away that it's Blackbeard, and it introduces the idea that it's either Shanks or Loki. it could very well just be about Shanks, because Shanks has a lot of information on the Holy Land now, and he's free in the world to roam. So there's a lot of setup here. I would love to explore that a little bit more. Again, I'm cool with confirmations and SBSs and different cards. I'm not sweating about it. There's a lot of stuff in One Piece, and Oda can't possibly put it all into one story without the story going on forever. Like, we gotta get some stuff in external sources, or else One Piece will just keep going and going and going. And I'm not saying I don't want One Piece to keep going forever. I love One Piece, but even at that point, we gotta give Oda a break. It's a lot. It's a lot. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.